All right, friends, it's T-Man. We are back with a brand new video. And in this video, we're going to do a reaction video to Menno Helmsman, the fitness slave here. Science fitness slave, that's right. Recruiting science fitness slave. So Menno Helmsman says, how much protein for max gains? 3 new studies. That's interesting. Okay.
Bodybuilders have long been waiting for a study in strength-trained athletes that are cutting to see if we really need at least 1 gram per pound of protein per day. That study is now here.
Really? So you need 1 pound of protein per day to build myofibulars? How does protein build new myofibulars? 1 pound each day? That makes no sense.
The Canadian researchers compared protein intakes of 1.3, 1.7 and 2.3 gram per kilogram per day. In freedom units, that is 0.6, 0.7 and 1 gram per pound. Again, these were strength-trained athletes that were in 12% energy deficit. They were supposed to be in 25%.
These are strength-trained athletes. Okay.
Energy deficit, but, participants never listen to what the researchers say. The athletes came from various backgrounds, including boxing, soccer, cycling, gymnastics, ice hockey, swimming, and ringette.
Okay, so they're exercising. They're not bodybuilding. They're exercising. They're not bodybuilding. They're not building muscle. They're exercising. Those are exercise people. Let's see how much protein you need. Let's see how much protein you need to build myofibular growth. Oh, can we build myofibular sarcomere parallel with just eating protein? No, simply eating protein will not cause myofibular sarcomeres to form in parallel or in series. So he says you need 1 pound of protein a day to build muscle. Well, as far as I know, playing sports and exercising does not build muscles. Get it? Nor does just eating protein and exercising. You understand me? You have to do something very specific to activate MPS, muscle protein synthesis. Listen to the word. Muscle protein synthesis, yeah. So while protein is essential for building and repairing muscle tissue, it's not a direct trigger for these specific muscle fiber arrangements. Yeah, no kidding. Look, your muscles have already grown. You're not going to grow any more muscles. You have to do something specific to grow muscles. And that ain't it. Get it? So, yeah. Muscle hypertrophy, muscle growth can occur through both parallel and series. They can. Formations, but these changes are primarily influenced by resistance training. Yeah, resistance, eccentric resistance training, and possibly concentric with eccentric if in full range of motion. It can happen, but it doesn't happen that much. And other factors, not just protein intake. Get it? You understand me, man? So, elaboration. Myofibrillars and sarcomeres. Yeah, myofibrillars are the contractile units. Contractile. So because you're just eating protein, are you increasing these contractile units within the muscle cells? And sarcomeres are the repeating units within each myofibril? Well, sarcomeres consist of thick myosin and thin actin. Myosin and actin, yeah, filaments, which interact to cause muscle contractions. Yeah. Muscle growth hypertrophy means just something's getting bigger because you're getting more of something. Muscle growth can happen through 2 main mechanisms: adding sarcomeres in parallel, making the muscles wider, or adding sarcomeres in series, making the muscles longer. So resistance training, weightlifting, etc. is the primary driver of what? Muscle hypertrophy. It is the primary, but it is the eccentric that is the primary driver of muscle protein synthesis. So it stimulates the breakdown of muscle tissue. Well, what will stimulate the breakdown of muscle tissue? Not just lifting a weight. If you're adapted and lifting a weight, so you've turned it into a sport. I'll explain this. Powerlifting is not a modality for building muscles. Why? Because it's a sport. Get it? Just like playing hockey or fucking playing basketball, or like what you saw there in the beginning of his stupid ass video. Get it? You understand me? Sports don't build muscles. Bodybuilding builds muscles. Why? Because it can't be a sport. It compromises sportive performance. What activates MPS? Muscle damage. So if muscle damage activates MPS to build, repair, and remodel muscles, then it must compromise sportive performance. So bodybuilding is not a sport, because I don't know any sport that's called bodybuilding. Hey, let's go to a bodybuilding competition. There are no bodybuilding competitions anywhere in the world. Let's go to a competition to see who could damage the most muscle fibers, bodybuilding, and see how many of these sarcomere in series and parallel they can build at the end of the competition. No such competition exists. Get it? Get it through your head. Da. So, yeah, man, this is bullshit. Resistance training, weightlifting, etc., is the primary driver of muscle hypertrophy. Well, it's a primary driver providing there's muscle damage. It stimulates the breakdown of tissue. What stimulates that? Muscle damage. And the body then repairs and rebuilds it, potentially adding new sarcomeres. Yeah, providing there's damage. Role of protein. Protein is essential for muscle repair and growth, providing the building blocks, amino acids, for new muscle tissue. However, protein alone won't trigger these specific arrangements of sarcomeres needed for parallel series hypertrophy, bro. Other factors such as sufficient calorie intake, adequate rest, and potentially specific hormonal influences also play a role in muscle growth and the formation of myofibrillar structures. Yeah. The protein is crucial for muscle growth, but guess what? It's not the sole trigger for myofibrillar sarcomere arrangements in parallel and series, bro. Get it? Resistance training, other factors are the primary stimulus of these changes. So what is it? Let me show you what it is, okay? See, eating protein simply will not create new myofibrillar sarcomeres and genesis and so forth in parallel. They even tell you here. Same thing that I just looked up a second ago. I'm going to copy this because it's just funny, man. When I read these things, it's funny, bro. This is just funny shit. Man, this Menno guy is just ridiculous. I'm surprised. He doesn't know anything. These people are so dumb. All right, there's another part here I popped up. Okay, hold on. Here it is. Yes, muscle damage does trigger an increase in muscle protein synthesis, MPS. After an initial bout of muscle damage, the body initiates growth mechanisms. See, growth mechanisms to support what? Tissue repair, which includes increasing protein synthesis. The increased protein synthesis is a response to what? Repair and rebuild damaged muscles, tissues. Get it? Fuck. Damage, muscle damage, repair mechanism, initial response, long-term adaptations. As muscle damage subsides with continued training, the focus of MPS shifts towards what? Overall muscle hypertrophy, leading to an increase in muscle mass over time. Factors influencing MPS. Several factors can influence MPS. Yeah. The intensity, yeah. Whatever. Muscle damage is what it does, okay? Optimizing MPS. Here, this is how you optimize it. Consuming protein after exercise, that's the most important thing after exercise. Not exercise, damaging exercise. Especially essential amino acids can further enhance the MPS response and muscle growth. Yes, it can. So you got to eat a lot or you're in an apoptosis. You're in an apoptosis, dude. Get it? I'll copy this section too. I forgot to copy this. I don't know. Maybe I'll post this in the community section. I don't know. I'll think about it. Maybe I'll post it there. All right, let's go back to the video because I'm wasting time here. So sports does not build muscles, okay?
It was ice hockey. Anyway, more importantly, there were no significant differences between the groups other than their protein intakes. So energy intake did not significantly differ between the groups, which is very important for a study like this. And they also had the same training program, same everything. So, what do you think happened? Which group do you think had the best results? And what were the margins?
I don't know. What were they?
Differences between the groups at the end of the study period. None of their gains in performance, strength, or body composition significantly differed between the groups.
Yeah. Why would they change? They're playing sports, you dumbass. Why would they change? Look, protein synthesis is going on all day, 24 hours a day. It removes damaged proteins and then it replaces it with new proteins. That's its job. But that has nothing to do with trying to build myofibrillars. That's totally different. That is triggered through muscle damage. Christ.
Even between the lowest protein intake group. Body composition was measured by DEXA scans and corroborated by measuring protein mass and resting energy expenditure. Performance was measured by chest press strength, chin-up performance, broad jump performance, leg press strength, and leg curl strength. And
And what about it? What about it? What if they're adapted to these exercises? They're all adapted to them. There's no damage. They're adapted. So it's an exercise.
And none of these measures showed significant differences between the groups.
Yeah, of course not, because they're adapted. That's why it didn't show anything. There's no sarcomeres. Okay, there's no myofibrillar growth. Okay.
We look at absolute values and we are going into over-analysis mode.
The question is this: how much protein do you need to eat when you have damaged muscle fibers? When you have a real damaging session, how much protein do you need to eat? A lot. You need to eat a lot. You need to be in positive nitrogen balance. Protein synthesis needs to exceed that breakdown to see that fucking mass on that fucking myofibrillar. Get it, dude? Man.
We might be tempted to conclude that fat loss was a little bit worse in the highest protein intake group. They actually had no significant fat loss at all. So technically, they were actually not in energy deficit.
What does that have to do with MPS? Fat loss? What are you talking about?
Meaning they had a little bit higher energy intake, and that also showed up in non-significantly higher energy intake. And they had a little bit higher fat-free mass gains than the other groups. But the researchers explicitly noted, what is more, changes in protein mass obtained by subtracting total body water from fat-free mass did not change significantly. No effect of the different protein intakes was observed on any of our body composition variables. It is important to note.
Yeah. No effect of different protein intakes was observed on any of the body composition variables because they were adapted. They weren't doing EIMD fucking training, bro. Exercise-induced muscle damage training. They weren't bodybuilding, in other words.
That the eta squared for differences in fat-free mass between groups was extremely low, 0.002. Thus
Listen, if you exercise, you can lose body fat. If you're an athlete, you're fucking playing hockey all day or basketball or whatever, of course you're going to lose body fat. You're expelling energy. Your muscles are going to eat the body fat as energy, okay? But that has nothing to do with bodybuilding. You understand me? You can't lose body fat and build muscle at the same time. This is impossible, bro. You're in an apoptosis.
The absence of trend in the data for the main study outcome. So basically we can say that there was no notable trend at all in terms of better gains in any of the groups. In fact, if you were really going to try to overanalyze the results, it seems that the lowest protein group would have slightly better gains than the medium protein group. All of this is normal variance. We can say that there were...
The only gains they got there were sarcoplasmic gains.
No significant differences between the groups.
Those are artificial gains.
Now, you might be thinking, this is crazy, Menno, like 1.2 gram per kilograms. Are you tripping? That is way too low. And indeed, that is probably...
Look, man, I can actually not eat for 2 or 3 days. I can literally go for 2 or 3 days not eating. Does that mean I've lost muscle? No. What's going to happen? The first thing that's going to happen, my body's going to tap into the glycogen stores. So it's going to start eating as much glycogen stores like crazy as it can. And then, if anything, it'll tap into fat. That will be the second phase.
Way too low. However, these results fit very well in the total body of literature. Many people are under the impression that if they don't get 1 gram per pound of protein, that they're going to wither away and die just that same day.
That sounds ridiculous. If I don't get 1 pound or something of protein, I'm going to wither away and die. For what? The majority of their diets are slave food diets, carbohydrate slave food diets. What do you talk about? It's preserving their muscle. Look, the amount of carbs people eat is astronomically high. It's preserving their muscle. So, man, none of that makes sense. They need all this protein. Like, they're going to the gym because they're lifting, because they're burning calories. Well, I don't know why they're going to exercise to burn calories. Why don't they just stop eating calories? Calories are not based on health. That's not healthy. Healthy calories. What's a healthy calorie? There's no such thing.
That is really not how it works. Protein intake's effects on fat-free mass are quite gradual. And I should go over even protein intakes as low as 1.2 gram per kilogram per day, which is typically what I recommend even for sedentary individuals. Yes, you generally see better gains in studies, but they're not
What? You see better gains in what studies?
massive effect.
What are you talking about? Because they're not bodybuilding, you dumbass. Why would they see any significant gains, you stupid fuck?
And the more you go up to the ideal protein intake, which I would say is generally something along the lines of at least 1.8 gram per kilogram per day, which is 0.8 gram per pound, you see very, very small effects. So
listen, man, you can eat less than, I don't know, a couple of grams of protein a day. Let's say you had I don't know, 30 grams, not even 10 grams. Let's say you only ate 10 grams the entire day of protein, but the rest of your diet was carbohydrates. Well, it'll spare that protein for the muscle, for the MPS that's going on 24 hours a day. So who gives a shit, bro? And anyways, these carbs have some protein in them, man. Whatever the foods you're eating, there's always something there. You need essential, of course, there's essential amino acids. Those you definitely don't want to run out of, but you're going to get them anyways.
Study like this, and this is where the limitations come in, we typically don't see that these effects are statistically significant, even between protein intakes as low as 1.2 and 1.6 or 1.7 gram per kilogram. And we have many, many studies like this that show no significant differences between groups, even at lower protein intakes. However,
where innovation meets the...
I'm going to explain to you right now. It doesn't matter how much protein you eat. If you're not lifting for quite a long time, for, I don't know, maybe after a certain period of time, these myofibrillars, they can dismantle themselves at some point because the new ones that you built are not your original ones. You built mass, but unless of course you build some new fibers, if you build new fibers, they may stay. But if it's a lot of it's just mass built up through contractile proteins, it will go away. It will go away eventually with the time if you don't keep up with it. You have to do some damaging sessions to keep up with it, for sure. So you need a lot of protein. Anyways, let me hold on.
Just that individual studies that are tightly controlled, but we look at recent meta-analyses, which I've discussed in recent videos in more detail, then we do see a trend in favor of higher protein intakes. These meta-analyses have
a trend in higher protein intakes, but why? Why exactly? Are they not eating enough carbs? What are they? Are they on a carnivore diet, so they need more protein? What are you talking about?
Significant
Are they burning protein as energy?
Methodological shortcomings, such as not controlling for energy intake or nutrient timing.
There you
go.
So
we have to take these with
energy intake and nutrient timing. Okay.
A grain of salt, but what we can say based on these analyses and these studies and the current study as well is that if there is any effect, it's going to be small. You're not going to see it in a study like this that is 6 weeks long and has 21 athletes that are not making it to the end. Now, for you as an individual, that also means that when we're talking about 1 gram per pound or a little bit more, a little bit less, we're really talking about micromanaging. We're talking about very small effects, even in strength-trained individuals that are in energy deficit. And this study also casts further doubt on the idea that in energy deficit, you need higher protein intakes. This is very commonly heard in bodybuilding circles, but it's actually not based on any solid evidence. I've also done a video on that recently, that you probably don't actually need significantly more protein when you are cutting, so you can check that out on my channel as well. But this study is in line with no effect of energy deficit, because we still don't see significant effects in this study when they were cutting. All in all, the researchers concluded, taken together, we suggest that the American College of Sports Medicine recommendation of 1.2 to 1.7 gram per kilogram is sufficient for most athletes.
But why? So there you go. Athletes is sufficient for athletes, but why exactly?
Males and females, even during periods of energy restriction, if a proper resistance training regimen is implemented. And I think many bodybuilders might be surprised that the American
What proper exercise regime is whatever? What are you talking about?
College of Sports Medicine recommends protein intakes as low as 1.2 to 1.7 gram per kilogram for...
It wouldn't matter if they're not damaging any muscle fibers. They don't need to. Are you saying that they're going to lift? So what is the purpose of going to the gym and lifting weights? Because they want to increase some breakdown in proteins? They want to make it go faster, accelerate it? So, I have to go home now and eat a lot of protein? Let me go to the gym and let me accelerate this protein breakdown that is originally breaking down anyways 24 hours a day. I'm going to go home and then I'm going to spend all this money on food because I have nothing better to do with my money, and then eat and put it all back again or some shit. What? That makes no sense, dude.
Strength-trained individuals. I would not recommend protein intakes that low. I would recommend 1.8 gram per kilogram per day, total protein intake per total body weight, at a minimum, which is 0.8 gram per pound. I would not go below that in almost any scenario because the risk reward is really poor unless you really struggle somehow to get that protein in due to maybe a medical condition.
Right, okay,
But it
yeah.
is true, and there are a lot of scientists, including the American College of Sports Medicine, that show that the effects of protein intakes, even at lower protein intakes than this, are quite marginal. We're talking about small effects. Now, I think the ACSM is not fully up to date with the latest research and is not suited for individuals that are very serious lifters that are interested in maximizing muscle hypertrophy. If you are that type of individual, then I would highly recommend my own PT course because it is specifically designed by serious lifters for serious lifters to learn everything you need to know about maximizing muscle hypertrophy, fat loss.
Yeah, I don't
Most
need to
protein
know.
intake recommendations, including the one I just gave, rely on a bunch of assumptions.
Okay.
One of those assumptions is that you get at least 50% of your total daily intake
I
from
love this assumptions.
high quality sources. If you don't, you might need more protein intake. A new meta-analysis of 12 studies found that animal proteins, which have high protein quality, typically stimulate a little bit more muscle protein synthesis than plant protein sources. This is one of those findings that 10 years ago would have been like,
No, really? You don't say.
duh. But with the rising popularity of vegan dieting over the last decade, this finding is now
Vegan dieting doesn't exist. It's fake, something fake, okay?
controversial. Theoretically, it makes perfect sense
There's no such thing as vegan diet. That's something you made up.
that plant proteins stimulate less muscle protein synthesis than animal proteins because they have
Humans don't eat plants. They're carnivore animals. They eat meat.
lower protein quality for two good reasons. First, they have lower digestibility. It is harder for a human body to extract the nutrients out of a plant than out of an animal. And secondly, they have lower protein quality. Animal protein sources have an amino acid composition that is much more similar to that of a human body. If you think about it, animal flesh is, quite similar to human flesh, especially in like a very base biological level. The amino acid composition is quite similar, but if you compare it to, say, soy or a bean or some grass, the amino acid composition is very different. And that means that you don't get all the amino acids that you need. Some amino acids might not be in the food at all, and some other amino acids might be in there, but in different ratios than for the human body.
Okay, so what does this have to do with 1 gram of protein or some protein measure that you need? What does this have to do with any of that? What are you talking about?
And we talk about protein as if protein intake is it's like one thing, but it's not. Our body cares about the intake of all the amino acids.
Let me ask you this question. If I just eat protein, I eat animal products all day, so that's all I eat. So am I getting enough protein? Hello? You understand me? If I'm hunting, I'm a hunter, I'm a human being. I'm a human. I eat meat. I'm a carnivore. Humans are carnivores. I eat meat all day. I eat meat. Fish. Fish is considered meat too. That's considered meat. It's meat, fish. So fish, whatever, these cows, whatever. I'm eating that all day. Am I getting sufficient protein? Is the protein sufficient? Hello? Fucking doesn't make any sense, this guy, man. These people are dumb.
Especially essential amino acids. So it relies
What about essential amino acids? Yeah, you need essential amino acids. And what about them?
on a certain assumption of the ratio of these amino acids to make sure that when we say we have had enough total protein intake, that we have in fact enough of all the amino acids. Because again, your body doesn't care about the total protein intake.
Yeah, you need the ones that your body doesn't produce, so you need an abundance of those. So those are the ones you want to overload on a lot. Specifically, if you're trying to build your body, bodybuilding, building your body, using bodybuilding. Yeah. Not, I got to go play sports and pretend I'm going to build a muscle playing sports or exercising, or I'm going to do powerlifting, a sport, and I'm going to try to build a muscle. I'm going to get a stronger nervous system, and my stronger nervous system is going to magically fucking build me a muscle. So I need to go and eat a lot of protein like an asshole.
cares about each individual amino acid.
Christ.
We just simplify it to total protein intake because it would be a massive pain in the ass to calculate your amino acid intake for every single amino acid.
Look, man, if I'm damaging my muscles bodybuilding, why the fuck would I measure any kind of protein that I'm fucking taking, bro? That doesn't make any sense. You have to eat. I would eat for 5 hours straight after a damaging session. I'm in an apoptosis, bro. Get it? I'm there to build muscle. I'm not there to fool around. I'm going to eat astronomically high amounts of food for the next couple of hours. And even before I go to bed, I'm going to keep eating. I'm going to be in a positive nitrogen balance. That means more nitrogen is coming in than being expelled.
I would reiterate, though, that the difference in muscle protein synthesis between animal and plant protein sources was small. Now, it was dragged down by one study, as you can see here, Montaigne et al., which had a higher protein intake and a much higher calorie intake in the vegan supplement. So that's not really a fair comparison. If you look at all the other comparisons,
Vegans can't build muscle. It's a lie. If they were to damage their muscle fibers, if they were to go in for a damaging session, bodybuilding, and damage their muscles, and eat a vegan diet, they would get scurvy probably and die. I don't know what would happen to them. I've never done a test like that, but most likely it would be the result. It would be bad. Let's just put it that. It would be very bad for them. Maybe scurvy.
Unanimously in favor of animal protein sources, but the effect sizes are very small. So it's not like you can't build muscle on a vegan diet. You just need a little bit extra.
That's a lie. You cannot build myofibrillar growth on a vegan diet, okay? It's impossible. It's impossible because, man, these plants are toxic. They carry amount of toxicity in them, and they're deficient in these amino acids, and they're shit. And your body's gonna have a hard time trying to absorb it from a plant. It's ridiculous.
Protein. How much extra depends on the amino acid composition of your foods. You have to look at the complementariness of those foods.
It's inferior.
Or if you add around 20.
Plant diets are inferior to carnivore diets because humans are carnivores. They're not plant eaters. We're not ruminant animals. We don't ruminate. Christ.
20% depending on the quality of your protein sources, or if you supplement a.
Look, you can't absorb them because you're not a ruminant animal. Humans don't ruminate. So when you eat these plants, you're not a ruminant animal. You have to ruminate them and bring them back down again. You have to regurgitate, chew them again, and bring it back down so that you can absorb these things. But you're not ruminant. You're not doing that. You understand me? That's why it doesn't work for humans.
Relatively high quality vegan protein, like a blend of pea and rice protein, 80% pea protein, 20% rice protein.
That's disgusting. Rice has arsenic in it. It accelerates aging. It shortens your lifespan because you're poisoning yourself, you dumbass. And it causes glycation because it's sugar. It glycates the proteins, and it also causes senescent. This crap increases senescent cells. That's why you look like the mummy when you die. You look like a mummy. Yeah, you actually look like a mummy.
To very high digestibility and a very good amino acid composition, then something like 1 gram per pound, the traditional bodybuilding.
Zero amino acid compositions. The only reason somebody would use a complex carbohydrate in bodybuilding, when most of their diet should be animal, is only for the effects that it can produce, like an increase in insulin, which is anabolic, and it would have a sparing effect for the protein that you're already eating anyways, and a sparing effect throughout the day, and an increase in insulin. That's all. Keeping you anabolic. That's all. We're trying to stay anabolic. We're trying to be in positive nitrogen balance. That's the whole point. We want to be in a kind of a growth state because we're damaging our fibers, and we're trying to keep growing these fibers. The whole idea is to keep growing them to the point where, I don't know, when we get satisfied, we don't build no more. And if we want more, then we'll continue doing that again. Maybe later at the same time or whatever. Get it, dude?
Recommendation is most likely enough to fuel very good gains. In another new study, animal protein
ain't going to fuel any gains if there's no damage.
Boosted the metabolism of the participants more than plant proteins. This is
what? How animal and plant-based proteins efficiently metabolism during the post-phase in overweight and obese men. Well, yeah, there's no such thing as obese and overweight men. They're eating something artificial. That's why they're becoming obese and fat and whatever. They're gaining weight. When cows eat grass, when they want to bring them to the market big and fat, you know what they do? They feed them corn and grain. You understand me? They call it grain-finished cow. That's what they call them. They grain-finish the cow. So when it comes to market, he's big and fat, okay? And that is passed on to you, bro. They have all kinds of, it's a sick animal. You're eating a sick animal, and then you become sick and you still don't know what's wrong with you.
Likely related to the higher muscle protein synthesis. The muscle protein synthesis.
All of humanity is sick.
Is a very energy-intensive process, and as a result, in this study, in very well-controlled conditions, animal protein sources resulted in a higher thermic effect of food and a higher resting energy expenditure compared to plant protein sources. This
no kidding.
difference in energy expenditure is most likely too small to affect fat loss outcomes meaningfully in long-term research. Indeed, in most long-term studies, we do not see substantially more fat loss just as a result of people changing their protein source. However, it does fit with the
fat loss, changing their protein source. You mean cutting out the slave food diet? Yeah. If they cut out these fake plant food diets, then yes, they'll see significant change. Just eating animal protein, yes.
difference in muscle protein synthesis. Speaking of the thermic effect of food, that is another reason to consume a high-protein diet beyond its effect on muscle growth. With a high-protein diet, not only do you get more muscle growth, you also stimulate your energy expenditure more because protein has a high thermic effect.
It's a very high nutritious diet. It's very high in nutrients meat, okay? So I can get away with eating one meal a day. I don't feel hungry. I can wake up in the morning. I'm not hungry in the morning. I may eat very late in the afternoon. I may eat some meat and then go to sleep at night. And I'm pretty full these days because my cells have been so regulated to the point where they're very good at absorbing nutrients now. Very good because I've not been eating any plant foods anymore. I just eat meat products, fish and meat. And so it's sufficient. Now my body is running it's very sufficient in absorbing these nutrients. And so, I'm not eating all day long because I'm starving all the time, eating carbs and all these weird things, which actually causes a desensitization in the receptors. So that's another problem.
Costs a relatively high amount of energy to absorb and digest protein, and it has a positive effect on our metabolism, in part by increasing muscle protein synthesis. And even if you don't synthesize new proteins when you consume more protein, oxidizing protein is
You don't synthesize new protein while consuming protein. You synthesize new proteins only when the bad proteins are removed. They remove the bad and then they put in the good ones. That's how they do it. They do it anyways, regardless of how much protein you're eating all day long. Of course, as long as you're not starving yourself to death.
A relatively energy inefficient process, so you still get a little bit of increase in your metabolism. Moreover, high-protein diets typically stimulate more satiety, making you feel more full and having less desire to eat compared to low.
They don't make you full at all. I don't feel full eating protein. What are you talking about? And that guy's fat. Bro, you mean plants give you inflammation, making you feel like you're full because of the inflammatory response. But meat, you never feel full when you eat meat because it's highly digestible. There's no inflammatory response from meat. You're waiting for the response because you've been on the slave food diet your whole life. You've been in a coma your whole life. You just fucking woke up. You don't even know what the fuck is going on. You understand me, man? Once that inflammatory response is gone and you're eating normal food, you go like, what is this? This is what it's like to be normal? Oh my God. This is what it's like to be normal. Yeah.
Protein diets.
I love how TD supports black-owned business.
However, how big are these advantages exactly? This was investigated in the last new study I have for you today.
I don't know how big.
The researchers compared two diets consisting of ultra-processed foods.
There you go. Short-term effects of high protein, lower carbohydrate, ultra-processed foods on human. Why would you eat processed foods? They don't exist in nature. They're fake. You understand me? Everything he's talking about is fake here, bro.
With either 30% or 13% of their calories coming from protein. A group of healthy young adults.
Here's another thing. When these animals, they eat mycotoxins, you consume them. When they have dysbiosis in the stomach, these cows, they develop dysbiosis. When you eat them, you occur all these things that the cow has. That's why you're not working optimally. You're all fucked up because you're suffering from dysbiosis, mycotoxin toxicity. You're suffering from fucking God knows what, bro. Maybe even marbleizing your muscle. It's marbleizing because their muscle's marbleized. They're eating grains they're not supposed to. They're eating fucking corn. And all of these things affect these animals. They're sick animals. They have to be injected. The injections are to suppress the diseases coming out from eating foods that they're not supposed to. They're tolerating it. But it fucking diseases them. Get it? It causes a disturbance in your DNA. You call it disease. It's a abnormal reaction to the damage in the DNA that's caused by these other plants because they're not immune from eating them. You understand me? Christ. So humans are sick animals too because they all get booster shots and polio shots and everything. It's to suppress the diseases from eating plants. Why would your body give you polio? Why would you have polio? Why would you have these diseases? Because you're eating fucking toxic plants, dude. And it's past, that's tradition now. It's become tradition. Your family feeds it to you. Here comes the airplane. Open your mouth, feed this, eat that. Man, they force you to eat toxic plants all day, your family. Then they tell you it's healthy. It's number one. They lie to you and tell you that these so-called plants you're eating are fucking healthy and they're good for you. Meanwhile, you know as a kid it's toxic and you don't like them. You don't want to eat them, but they force you to eat them. Why? Because that's the tradition. It becomes tradition. They love to poison each other. Humans are sadistic. Humans are the sickest animal on the planet. You understand me? They're sick in the head, sick in the brain, and they believe whatever you tell them. They believe anything. They're so dumb. They're the dumbest animals.
As much as they want of each diet, and the researchers strictly monitored what happened to their energy expenditure and energy intake in a controlled laboratory for 54 hours. The high protein group ended consuming a whopping 3.3 gram per kilogram protein, which is 1.5.
And so what? And so I eat only protein. I eat meat. And sometimes I eat a lot. I can eat a lot of fish and it's sushi, and I can eat a lot of beef. So I can consume, I don't know, quite a few hundred grams of, I don't know, protein. Maybe, I don't know, 1,000 grams of protein. Maybe more. Maybe over 1,000 grams of protein a day sometimes I can consume. And so what?
5 gram per pound compared to the low protein group of 1.5 gram per kilogram, which is 0.7 gram.
Yeah, but I'm not eating it. I'm not eating it for the protein itself. I'm eating it for the overload in nutrients. But again, you have to be careful because water-soluble nutrients can become toxic in your body. So that's why I slow down. Usually when I go to a buffet, that would be my whole meal the whole day. I don't eat anything for breakfast or evening. That would be my one whole meal. But I don't do it often. I skip days and stuff and all that. And then I don't even eat anything the following day after the buffet because I'm full with nutrients. And so it's the water soluble that's coming in and out that you want. But the problem is you want the water soluble. The problem is it's the fat soluble that can build up and become toxic. And they can give you complications. So you have to be careful.
Per pound. So how many extra calories do you think the high protein group burned?
I don't
Energy
know.
expenditure was 128 calories higher in the high.
Who gives a shit about calories? Why do you think calories are healthy for you?
Protein group. So not a trivial difference, but also not a shockingly large difference. They did achieve that while also consuming 196 calories less. So basically they had 200 calorie lower energy intake and about 100 calories higher energy expenditure.
What kind of calories were they eating? What's this calorie stuff? Are you saying that protein is a calorie? Are you counting it as a calorie? That's all they ate was protein? They didn't eat anything else? What are you talking about?
Making the total difference in energy balance 300 calories.
Whatever.
And that is very substantial. However, if we look at the total literature, this difference is highly inflated compared to most studies because of the extreme energy intakes. The lower protein group.
There you go, the extreme energy intakes that they took. So you don't know what they were doing. And these so-called energy intakes, those plants, they have proteins built into them, fucking. So you're getting additional protein. You're getting it from animals, you're getting from these plants too, which are shitty anyway.
A 32% energy surplus, so massive overfeeding dreamer bulk. And the high protein intake group,
Yeah, exactly, overfeeding, yeah, massive.
while having a lower energy balance, still was in an 18% energy surplus. So this was based.
Hold on. So the low energy intake, are you talking about these guys here, low energy? 300 cal, what's that one? It says, what are you talking about? It says 300. Here it says 128, 196. I don't know what the fuck's going on here, man. This is low and this is high. Okay, whatever.
Basically dreamer bulk versus ultra dreamer bulk. A recent meta-analysis, which studied more moderate, normal type conditions with whole foods, found that the difference in energy expenditure between higher and lower protein diets in most conditions was actually statistically insignificant. You typically need to double your protein intake, and again, in this study, this was also looking
You need
at
to double your protein intake, and why? Exactly, why?
doubling your protein intake to get approximately a 70 calorie difference in energy expenditure. So in that light, it's not so great. It's a nice added bonus, but going out of your way.
I think people have sarcoplasmic and myofibrillar, they have it kind of confused. They have it confused, bro. Get it? You understand me? High energy intake foods. What are they? Plant foods, carbs, something, bullshit, sugar, I don't know what. But guess what? That's going to increase the size of the sarcoplasm. That isn't fucking contractile proteins. That's not muscle, bro. Christ.
To consume a lot of extra protein just to get 70 calories higher energy expenditure doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It costs more money, and if you're force feeding yourself a whole lot of
Why would it cost more money? What exactly you're talking about? We're eating for health. Are you eating because you want to destroy yourself? So you need a lot of energy, slave food energy, which accelerates aging and you look like a mummy because you've been enslaved. That's what they give slaves, and then they turn into mummies eating energy foods, a drug called energy foods. Like sugar and shit? What are you talking about?
extra protein, which you may not enjoy as much, then the cost, both in
Why
terms
wouldn't I enjoy it?
of effort and money, because protein is more expensive than
Oh, so it's money because it's more expensive. So it's more expensive to promote good health, according to this Menno guy, so you won't look like a mummy. And so you will look like a mummy because you won't spend the money, so you'll eat fake food, garbage, that it will accelerate aging because you're eating energy, fake plant food, fucking drugs induced diet, which accelerates aging and you'll look like a mummy. Okay, great.
the other nutrients typically. It's probably not worth it to go super high on protein just to get, 50 calorie extra energy expenditure. Moreover, when
What do you mean extra protein to get extra energy expenditure? You want to know what kind of energy mitochondria runs off of? Animal fat. It runs best off of animal fat than it would run off of complex. The question is this: why would you use if you're an athlete? Here's the thing: if you're not a bodybuilder, you're not building your body. Or let's just say you're not taking up bodybuilding to build muscle. Then why would you take a complex carbohydrate if you're an athlete? I wouldn't take it at all because I'm not building muscle. I'm trying to expand some of the sarcoplasm, so I use the complex carbohydrate as a tool to try to expand a little bit of the sarcoplasm so there's room for more myofibrillar growth. It makes it easier. However, I try not to eat too much of it because you got to be careful when it comes to even complex carbs. But as far as energy, as a sports person, you're going to do better on animal fat. So he says energy food. Well, he doesn't say anything about animal fat. You should be eating more animal fat than you're eating protein. Get it? Because of the energy expenditure. Your body will not age. There won't be no glycation and aging, look like a mummy if you eat high animal fat because there's no sugar in there. Get it? It's not a drug. Animal fat is not a drug. You understand me, people? It is not toxic or it's drug induced or anything like that. So your mitochondria run better off of animal fat. Why? Because there's no oxalates, there's no fucking toxins and shit and everything. There's no sugar binding to the proteins, causing glycation, accelerated aging, oxidative stress, hypoxia, whatever. You get the picture, man? That's why it's much better to run off of animal fat. Now, in bodybuilding, can you typically use a higher animal fat with protein to build muscle? Well, yes, you can. You see what I mean? It's something you have to experiment with. Me personally, my experience is I get much more gains with a complex carbohydrate. But again, you have to watch out for what? Oxalates, and then you have to watch out for glycation binding with the protein. Now, can you handle it when you're younger? Yeah, for a short time when you're young. It's not something you want to do forever. Then you want to switch over to animal fat eventually. Here's the thing. You build up your body to a certain degree with muscles, myofibrillar growth, but you want to switch over to animal fat eventually. You understand me? You don't have to always do complex carbohydrate. Now, that could be difficult for some people to eat a natural diet because they've been eating unnatural for all these fucking years. You understand me, dude? So that is another reason. I would have to go into much more detail to explain this so people could really understand visually. You need to visualize it in your small brain and see what the fuck does this do to you, a complex carbohydrate. How does it destroy you? And how does animal fat destroy you? Well, it doesn't. See, that's the thing. It doesn't. It makes you better. How do complex carbohydrates destroy you? Glycation, oxalates, Get the picture?
go to protein intakes beyond those required for maximum muscle protein synthesis and muscle growth, we see that the satiety difference also becomes trivial in most research. In fact, in a new study, the high protein group reported higher subjective appetite. So while consuming fewer calories, they were also more hungry, which is not necessarily a big advantage when you're cutting.
They were feeling more hungry because they were not getting sufficient nutrients. That's why.
Because you typically don't want to be hungry. In our own well-controlled study on more normal...
You typically don't want to be, if you're hungry, it's because you have an insufficient amount of nutrients and animal fat in your diet.
circumstances, comparing 1.8 versus 2.7 gram per kilogram, so 50% increase in protein intake above requirements for muscle growth, also found no significant difference in satiety between them.
No, you need a lot of protein, muscle. Listen, you need a huge amount of nutrients and protein, which is meat and nutrients. You need them together. You need a huge amount after a damaging session, specifically afterward, and the rest of the week, because you're in a building phase. You need to be in a positive nitrogen balance.
More moderate and a super high protein intake. These findings are in line with protein leverage. Our bodies drive us to consume protein until we have had enough protein. But after that point, protein becomes...
No, your body drives you enough till it has a sufficient amount of fucking nutrients in the cells. You understand me? When there's nothing interfering with the nutrient intake, well, guess what? Then it's sufficient, get it? And you won't be eating so much. And you'll be like shocked. Why aren't you eating so much? Will I get skinny? Will I lose weight? No, you're not going to get skinny. You're not going to lose weight because eventually your body will have adjusted and it's more sensitive now to absorbing these nutrients. So it absorbs much easier now when you're on your natural carnivore diet, you as a carnivore eating meat. And so it's sufficient. And one piece of steak is sufficient sometimes for the entire day. You don't want to eat anymore. But you keep looking in the mirror thinking that you're going to shrink or get small because you ate one steak. That's not true. You see, you would feel hungry if you needed more nutrients. Your body would tell you, okay, we're hungry. But sometimes you're like going the whole day without eating. You know, you're so full with nutrients. You go the whole day without eating and you're like looking around and you're trying to go, wow, this is really weird. How come I'm not hungry? You're not hungry because you're like other carnivore animals. They usually eat sporadically. They don't eat every day. They kill an animal, they eat, and then they rest and they sleep for about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days, maybe 5, 6 days later, they might go out and eat an animal again. They don't eat everyday animals because if they ate all these animals, there wouldn't be any animals left to eat. You get it? If they ate every single fucking day, bro. That's the whole basis. So, yeah, I don't know, bro. Like I was going to say, yeah, that's the basis. Humans, the same thing. People will say, well, they ate all the animals around them. Humans, no. The more humans that humans created more humans like cockroaches. Well, then they had to keep feeding these mouths, and so they would eat all the animals around that area in that circumference where they lived. The animals weren't stupid. They ran away from humans. They knew that the humans were hunting them. Get it? They weren't that stupid. And so that's why they say they're hunter and gatherers. They're not hunting and gathering. They're chasing after animals because they ran away because they're not stupid. Get it? You're going to eat them.
Just like any other food. Most lean protein sources are still quite good for satiety because they are relatively low in calories. Yeah. Chicken breast and the like having somewhere around 100 calories per 100 grams. But if you compare those to high fiber foods, vegetables and the like, even potatoes, protein sources don't consistently beat those out. In fact, they do worse in most research. So in conclusion, there are three big benefits to consuming a high protein diet: more muscle growth, more energy expenditure, and less hunger. However, there are
He forgot to say not just protein, meat, high fat, animal fat. Get it?
Diminishing returns to all of those benefits. When you get to protein intakes of 1.8 gram per kilogram or 0.8 gram per pound, additional further benefits for satiety, energy expenditure, muscle growth, or strength development are very, very small and non-existent, in fact, in most studies. So if you love consuming a super high protein diet, these are nice additional benefits. But if you don't love consuming a high protein diet, or if you want to economize on your diet and save some money, then it's probably not worth going up to extreme protein intakes just to get very small further benefits. All right, I hope this helps you set up your diet. If you want to stay up to date on the latest science to master your physique, I'd be honored if you like and subscribe.
Sure thing, man. Tell me what you think about that. Like, subscribe, support the channel. I'll see you in the next video. Menno Helmsman, he's funny, man. That's why I say these whole things when people talk about protein synthesis, how much you need to eat, it's ridiculous. If you're not damaged, you don't need to eat a lot. And if you are damaged, well, you need to eat a lot, get it? And if you're sparing it with like these energy foods, the slave food energy foods, well, I don't know. Or if it's animal fat, which is much better for you, that energy is much healthier and better for you. Now, You can experiment with protein and high animal fat and lift weights to see where you get in muscle growth. You can experiment. You can cut off one and go with the other. It takes a while for your body to adjust from one to the other. You're on a drug-induced energy diet called complex carbohydrates, and now you're switching to something natural. So you're on something unnatural, and now you're trying to switch to something natural. See what I'm trying to explain to you? Which is called animal fat. So you're eating more high animal fat. Yeah, I don't know. It's something you need to experiment with. I'll see you in the next video. Tell us what you think about that. Like, subscribe, support the channel. I'm out of here, dude.